Rangam, please mute your mic. Keep the camera on, mute your mic. That's it. Okay. So, okay, this is good afternoon, and this is the first class on Indian Economy 1. So, this course will be taught by both me and ma'am. Out of 5 credits, I'll be facilitating 2 credits, and rest of the 3 credits will be facilitated by ma'am. Okay. So, the syllabus will be shared with you, and along with the lesson plan by both me and by ma'am. So, what will be our lesson plan with Indian economy? So, as far as the modules are concerned, so there are 4 modules in the syllabus. Out of the 4 modules, I'll be facilitating 2 modules, and ma'am will be facilitating 2 modules. So, I'll be facilitating module 1 and module 4. Ma'am will be facilitating module 2 and module 3. So, module 1 will be dealing with the Indian economy since independence till the current date. And module 4 will be dealing with the external in the sector of the India, external economy of India and its comparison with rest of the major world economies. So to begin with, today I'll be starting with the Indian economy since independence. Okay. So I will be starting the board work now. So, yeah, just a minute. So, yes. So I'm sharing. Can you see the document? Answer, Rangam.
Yes.
You can see, no? Okay, fine. So Indian economy. So this is the first class. Okay. So
Yes, sir.
we know that that we attained independence. Okay. So we attained independence in 1947. Okay. So at the time of independence,
Sir, it's showing so slow.
so it will go like this only. At the time of independence, so you just check the net at your end. So at my end, it's going well. So at the time of independence, Indian economy, so it was characterized by low per capita income.
Yes.
Okay. Low per capita availability of essential goods. Okay. Then
Yes, sir.
per capita consumption. Low per capita consumption. Okay. So all these things, these were one of the lowest in the world. So this was nothing. So all these things was perpetuated. It was perpetuated by a vicious. So it was perpetuated by a vicious circle. Okay. So what was this vicious circle? So now we have to understand this vicious circle. So if I now look next, so this, what was the reason? So first of all, the productivity, so there was low income. Okay. So as the income was low, so the savings was low. Okay. So low savings. Now, as we have learned from macroeconomics, so there is a relationship between savings and investment. So low savings lead to low investment in capital formation, so this led to low productivity. So lower productivity again led to low output, and low output led to low income. Okay, so low income led to what? Low income means low consumption. So we already know what is the consumption function. So low consumption means it led to low demand, and low demand led to again what? Low output. So it again went back. So it again went back to low output and low income. Okay. So this is what actually happened. So when there is low income and low consumption, so this was a vicious circle. So this vicious circle, low income and low consumption, it was the most characteristic feature of the Indian economy, starting right from the beginning of the colonial rule, I mean the British rule, which is from 1757 till India attained her independence in 1947. So it did not happen all of a sudden, it happened gradually, but by the time it reached 1947, the situation was like that. It was a very much poor economy, devastated economy, and it needed a lot of hard work to revive the economy. Okay, so this is what actually happened. Now, so yes, so now what actually happened next, if you see that the impact, so these basic conditions, so the basic conditions which you require, so the basic conditions of growth in the economy were utterly lacking. Okay, so they were utterly lacking. So the impact, so when we talk about this industrial revolution which happened in the 18th century, so this impact of industrial revolution in the late 18th and early 19th century was nothing if not altogether negative for the Indian economy. Now the question is this: why it was negative for the Indian economy? So we know that before the British came, or before the British rule started, India was hub of traditional manufacturing. Okay, India was the hub of traditional manufacturing, and India was also the major exporter, major world exporter. But after the British rule started, what happened? So there was this flooding of Indian markets. So there was flooding of Indian markets with traditional, sorry, not traditional, with finished manufactured products from Britain. So this led to what? So this, which was forced upon the general population, which is forced upon the general population through discriminatory trade practices. Okay, so discriminatory trade practices, and this led to the decline of the traditional industries. Okay,
Traditional.
so this led to the decline of the traditional industries. So people who were engaged, who were employed in this traditional industries, so they lost their employment. So they lost their employment. And what happened next? So this led to disproportionate increase in pressure of population on land for agriculture. Okay, so this was what was happening. Now, what happened next? So when the pressure increased disproportionately on land for agriculture without any concomitant change, without any concomitant change in the technology, without any concomitant change in technology, leading to a drastic fall in productivity in agriculture. Okay, in agriculture.
Yes, sir.
So what was A? So this led to A. So now this Rangam, please mute your mic. So this led to A. So now to some extent, this shock in productivity, so which was adverse shock in productivity, was somehow absorbed to a certain extent by the institution of joint family. Okay, so by the institution of joint family. So when this thing happened by the institution of joint family, so what happened? This led to something which you have studied in your development, under employment. Okay, under employment in agriculture, and also we can term this as a form of what? Disguised on employment. Fine. So this was something related to disguised unemployment. Now, excuse me. Hello. Yes, speaking, but tell me.
Sorry, sir. My father called me. I was trying to connect. I cannot hear.
Okay. So I'm again sharing the window.
Sir?
I'm sharing the window. I'm sharing the board. Can you see the board?
Yes, sir. Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
fine. Want to say something else?
No, sir.
Okay, fine. So, so now you're getting a board experience, I believe. So this is now what I'm supposed to be doing the Blackboard. I'm doing it here, and I can send it also to. I can send it on Google Classroom. Okay. So you don't have to write. You can follow the
Okay.
notes also. Okay. Apart from the video. So now, whatever this. So this was this disguised unemployment. So whatever surplus was generated, howsoever low, it may be, was used up in purchasing so this was basically used up in purchasing foreign manufacturers. Okay, number one, foreign manufacturers, and it was seldom used in improving the productivity. Okay, so this was the situation. So first, the Industrial Revolution, which happened in 19th century in Britain, it adversely affected the Indian economy without any corresponding improvement in the lot. So first of all, when the manufactured goods started coming from Britain, it was forced upon the general population through discriminatory practices that led to the decline of the traditional industries. As the traditional industries declined, the people who were employed in the traditional industries, they were unemployed. So the pressure of this unemployed population fell disproportionately on the land for agriculture. So the per capita productivity fell drastically in agriculture. But the adverse shock in terms of decline in productivity was absorbed to some extent by this institution of joint family, where everybody was doing some amount of work in agriculture. But what it led to? It led to unemployment and disguised unemployment, which you have already discussed in your development economics class. So whatever surplus, it was a very low surplus that was generated from agricultural operations. Most of it, if not all of it, was used up in buying foreign manufactures, and it was seldom used in improving the agricultural productivity. So this actually, if you see, all these actually led to perpetuation of stagnating condition in Indian agriculture. Okay, so this was a phenomenon, more or less. Now, as far as the industry is concerned, industrial sector is concerned, industry. So, no interest was shown by the British. So, no interest was shown by the British. Very limited industrialization happened due to some sporadic, I'll not use the term sporadic, but some limited due to limited efforts of indigenous businessmen. Okay. So why this happened? Because the capital was not available. The banking and all in this insurance sector was not providing non-availability of capital. So basically, there was non-availability, as I've already mentioned, the reason for non-availability of capital. Okay. So because of which there was very limited industrialization that happened due to some efforts of indigenous business. And even if this industrialization happened, they were basically concentrated in just few sectors. So what were the sectors? So whatever industrialization happened, it was basically concentrated into what? Jute, cotton textiles, then to some extent your sugar. Okay. So these were the three main industries where the investment basically happened. Only iron and steel and some chemical industries, they actually came only after 1910. So basically it was concentrated in these areas: jute, cotton textiles and sugar. Iron and steel and chemicals, they came only after 1910s, whereas engineering and machine tools was almost non-existent. Okay, so this was the situation of industrialization at the time of independence. And most importantly, what happened, even if you see this industrialization was basically based on agriculture, agricultural raw materials. So agricultural raw materials. So because of availability, because India was the main source of all these agricultural raw materials, that is jute, cotton, and sugar, that's why these industries developed on the Indian soil before independence. Though India had one of the largest deposits of iron in the world, which could have, and also good deposits of coal, then bauxite, or another and lot of minerals. Suppose mica was also there. Okay, despite having such richer deposits of iron, coals, bauxite, and mica, this metal industry, chemicals industry, of the engineering and machine tools industry, so that means basically the capital goods industry, was almost non-existent. So the main source through which surplus could have been generated, surplus generation sources, was non-existent. So these were the handicap situation of the Indian economy, and these were the disadvantages which were suffered by the Indian economy at the time of independence. So this was going on for a long time, but that's how it presented itself when India became independent. Okay. Now next comes the structure. So next comes the employment structure at the time of independence. Employment structure at the time of independence. So let us see what happened at the time of independence. So basically there are three sectors we know. So we have got agricultural sector, agriculture, then comes your manufacturing, and mining. Next comes your trade, transport, and communications. Okay. Then comes your services and professions. So let us see what was the percentage of people employed in all these sectors of the economy at the time of independence. So percentage employment. So in agriculture, if you see, 72% of the population was engaged. That means 72% of the labor force was engaged in agriculture. In manufacturing, the number was 10.7%, out of which only 2.6% was in formal sector, and the rest was unorganized sector. In trade and transport and communications, only 7.7% of the workforce was employed, and the rest, that is 9.3%, was employed in service sector. And what is their contribution? So percentage of GDP they contributed to. So 72.3% of the workforce employed in agriculture contributed how much? Just 49.1% of GDP. 10.7% of the workforce employed in manufacturing mining contribute to around 17.1% of GDP. 7.7% of the workforce employed in trade, transport, and communications contributed to 18.5% of GDP, whereas 9.3% of the workforce employed in service and professions contributed to 15.7% of GDP. Now we know that for development, so how do we assess whether an economy is developed or not? So we see what is the pattern of employment across the major sectors of the economy, that is percentage of labor force employed in each of the sectors of the economy, and what is the respective contribution of all the sectors to the GDP of the country. Now if you see, A big sign of underdeveloped economy is a disproportionate percentage of the workforce employed in agriculture, which is satisfied in this case, where 72% of the population was employed in agriculture. Whereas the percentage of population employed in manufacturing was abysmally low at 10.7%. But when we look at the contribution of the GDP, you see 72.3% of the workforce employed, but contributing how much? Hardly 49.1%. Whereas 10.7% of the population employed in manufacture contributes 17.1% GDP, and the most striking feature is in case of both trade and services. So trade 7.7% employed, but contributing to almost
18.
more than 1/6 of the GDP, that is at 18.5%, and 9.3%, that is hardly 10% of the workforce employed in services, but contributing to near about 1/6 of the GDP. So we can see from this structure that there was some sort of agricultural stagnation. Okay, so there was agricultural stagnation, number one. Number two, there was industrial stunting because the growth was not happening in industrial sector. Only thing that changed was there was a sort of a commercial revolution. That means there was tremendous expansion of trade and transport. Okay, so this was the structure which we inherited. Now, what were the other features of the general Indian society at the time of independence? Let us see it. What happened at the time of independence? So, what was the feature? So, if we see 84% of the population was illiterate. Think about it. Then 60% of the population in the school going group, that means in the age group in 6 to 14 age group, did not attend school. Okay, they did not attend school. Life expectancy was hardly 32 years for those who were born between 1940 and 1951. Okay, then what were the other issues? So there was mass poverty. So there was mass poverty. Then there was also this problem of destitution. Okay, then there was lack of proper health care and other essential social services. Okay, so these were the basic features. 84% of the population illiterate. That means hardly 1/6 of the population is literate. 3/5 of the school-going children did not attend school. Life expectancy hardly 32 years. Mass poverty, destitution, lack of proper health care. Then there were also other problems in terms of hunger, unemployment, then famine. So these were persistent issues. Okay, then backwardness, no modern means of production, no modern technologies. Then unskilled and untrained human resources. Okay, so these were the problems which were faced by the Indian economy. Okay, so now you can see a lopsided and imbalanced economic structure that was symptomatic or characteristic of Indian economy at the time of independence. Even now, some of these problems or some of these debilitating characteristics or vulnerabilities still exist. Okay, so they still exist. So, Rangam, is it morning at your place?
Sir?
Rangam, is it morning at your place?
No, sir, now it's getting
No,
dark.
the Fox,
It is dark.
no, it's quite interesting. We don't get to hear such things in the normal classroom. So I'm enjoying it. Don't worry. So now next we move to, now we get into sector-wise problems that were inherited at the time of independence. So we will be starting with the agrarian structure. Okay. So we'll now start with the agrarian structure. So what happened? The entire shock, this agricultural sector bore disproportionate burden of colonial economic policies. Now let's see how it happened. So during this time period, if I see, that is from 1901 till 1947, this is very unique feature. What happened? So in case of overall agricultural productivity, that means per capita agricultural productivity, so it fell by 29%. Think, over these almost half century period, the per capita agricultural productivity fell by 29%. But this includes both non-food grain and food grains. Okay. Problem which was being faced by the aid. Now, as far as the food grain per capita productivity food grain was concerned, it was even worse. How worse it was? So, it was worse in the sense, now if you see, it was worse even, so it fell per year at a rate of 1.14%. Think, overall agricultural productivity fell by 29%. So, but in case of food grains, it fell by 1.14%. That means, if you consider overall, it was 0.72%, and in food grains, it is 1.14%. That means that fall in the food grains production was almost, if you see, 60% more than the overall productivity. Think about it. So overall 60% more than overall productivity. Whereas in case of non-food grain, we have to see. In case of non-food grain, the overall productivity over this 40-year period increased by 14%. Okay. So these increased by 14%, whereas in case of whereas in case of food grains, it fell by 1.14% every year. So per year, it fell by 1.14%, which was 60% more than overall fall in productivity. And in case of non-food grains, there was increase in productivity during this time period by 14%. So this somehow moderated the overall per capita fall in agricultural productivity to 0.72%. So this was the problem. Now the question is this: if there was fall in per capita agricultural productivity, especially in case of food grains, which we saw at a rate of 1.14%, then how did the overall agricultural output increase? Overall agricultural output increased because of increase in crop acreage. That means increase in area under cultivation. Okay, so this was the challenge which we faced. So agriculture output increased because of increase in crop acreage, and it also happened mainly for non-food grain based cash crops. And why it happened because of cash crops? Because they acted as raw materials for manufacturing. By British industries. Okay, so they acted because they provided raw materials for manufacturing by British industries. So that's why the total area also increased under this non-food grain-based cash crops, and their total productivity also increased, which we have already discussed. That means what happened? It actually led to fall or stagnation in area under food grains, which was further aggravated by what? Which was further aggravated by lack of capital, modern technology, and high quality inputs. So whatever modern technology, whatever capital, or whatever high quality inputs was applied, it was basically applied only in case of what? It was applied only in case of your non-food grain-based cash crops. So it is simple microeconomics. So the farmers basically were driven by incentives. So their incentives for production basically lay in the contribution of non-food grain-based cash crops, for which there was a ready-made market in terms of raw materials for use by the British industries. Whereas in case of food grain, because of low income and low demand, they were reduced, which was further coupled with the non-application of modern technology, high-quality inputs, the productivity fell. So the overall output was also available, the overall output also fell, and the per capita availability of the food grains decreased, which led to what? Which led to frequent famines. So you might have heard about, so there was one infamous famine that happened. So there was this Bengal famine. So Bengal famine, which happened in 1943 due to shortage of food grains, killed more than 3 million people. So this is one of the most darkest events in the human history, and the highest number of deaths, one of the highest number of deaths that has happened in any episode of famine in the recorded history of the world. Okay, so that's how the things came to a. And as I said, all the modern high quality inputs, that means fertilizers, seeds, irrigation, anything was applied only for cash crops, nothing for food crops. Result was frequent famine. Biggest event that happened was Bengal famine in 1943, which killed more than 3 million people. So what were the reasons that were responsible for this agrarian structure? What were the things that were responsible? So this was a regressive. So what were the causes? First cause was regressive agrarian structure. Okay. So what was this regressive agrarian structure? We already know that colonialism led to the rise of zamindari. Colonialism led to rise of zamindari, which led to rack renting, no investment in land improvement, so this led to what? This led to exploitation of farmers' surplus and subsistence through high land revenue charged by the government and usury, that means charging of high interest by money lenders and zamindars, which led to what? Which led to loss of land title by farmers, loss of land title by farmers and turning into tenants, sharecroppers, and was agricultural laborers. Okay, so this is what happened because of this regressive agrarian structure. Now what happened further? So next problem was internal drain of capital. So as I have already mentioned about this right in the beginning, associated with this regressive agrarian structure, whatever surplus was being generated by the farmers, including his subsistence, was extracted from him in an unjust way through imposition of high land revenues and other charges, extra legal charges by the jamindars as well as the money lenders from time to time, which left nothing with the farmers. So they were forced to lend money at higher interest rate from either the zamindars or the money lenders, following which they were deprived of the land titles, so the land titles were snatched away from them. So this actually perpetuated the problem of this internal drain of capital. So this internal drain of capital led to loss of savings or capital that could have been reinvested in agriculture for improvement in productivity. Okay. So this loss of savings and capital that could have been reinvested in agriculture for improvement in productivity was snatched away through internal drain of capital by these exploitative measures. Okay. Now the third problem that also affected, which I have already mentioned earlier, was poor technology. Okay. So poor technology was something which affected the productivity. So there was lack of application or availability, of modern technologies. So what were those modern technologies? Sorry. Lack of those modern technologies. So what were those modern technologies? So this was high yield seeds, fertilizers, then pesticides, then tractors and harvesters. Okay. So because of lack of application and availability of modern technology, there was decline in yield. There was a general decline in yield, and there was a very steep decline in food grain yield. Okay. And also one more thing which I forgot to add was there was irrigation facilities were very much non-existent, and whatever was basically provided for cash crops, which were non-food grain based, like cotton, jute, sugar, rubber, etc., etc. It was never being applied for food grains or food crops. So poor technology was actually responsible for low productivity and low yield in agriculture. So let me give some ideas how it actually affected. So if we see, as far as the improved seeds are concerned, it covered hardly 1.9% of the total area under agriculture, 1.9% area under agriculture at the time of independence. And so not at the time of independence, so in 1920s, which increased to somewhere around 11.1% in late 30s. Okay. And this was also basically confined to cash crops. The same thing can also be said about the other inputs, that is fertilizers, pesticides, irrigation, tractors and harvesters. And one of the main reasons why this technology, why there was poor technology, one reason was the awareness. Then knowledge. So lack of awareness, knowledge was one of the presiding reasons for poor technology that was applied in Indian agriculture. And these had to do with the illiteracy and destitution of the agricultural population. So whether would they provide for the subsistence or whether they would go for this technology. So they were torn between these two options, and they basically that affected the access or application of this modern technology. Okay, so we stop here today, and we will carry this discussion with respect to industry in our next class. So just follow the class and just be there on time. So any issues, Rangam?
Yes, sir. Actually, like from home, I have to go very fast. It's like 15
Huh?
kilometer. It's like 15 kilometer it takes from home
1.5.
to get the network. Yeah,
1.5
1.5.
kilometer.
Yes. I
Okay,
have to go by
actually, Rangam, I have already given you the timings. Which days I'm having classes? Okay, I've already given you the timings, so try to follow the timings. This is what I can request you. Okay, I cannot say anything else more than this right at this time. I will upload the videos. Don't worry, I'll upload the videos. So even if you cannot access, you can access the videos when you go to that point where you are accessing your net. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So thank you, and so this is what I needed to discuss today. Okay. So this is what I need to discuss today. I'll carry on the discussion in the next class, which is on Tuesday on Indian economy. And do attend Monday's econometrics class. I've given you the timings along with the video links. If you're not able to attend the class also, please attend the video or watch the video on YouTube, which I'll be uploading on YouTube. Okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Fine. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
And have a nice evening.
Good night, sir. Good night.
Good night. Good night.